Well, you had a dream for 30 years to have a European perspective. Now you have it. Wild West might be a nice term, but I think companies are looking for something else. This is very dangerous, very dangerous. Georgia needs to find its own model, yeah? I mean, we are happy to share the experience that we have. Of course, we did mistakes as well. Okay, we have a huge task ahead of us. We need a national consensus, and we were strongly working in this direction. Don't have fixed plans. It never works out the way you want, and it all falls very well into place. My name is Thomas Muhlmann. I'm the Austrian ambassador, and this is my interview for Sacatvelo Insight. First of all, thanks for inviting me. As you know, I'm from Austria. I'm coming from the western part of Austria. My hometown is Innsbruck, and that is in the middle of the mountains. So that's why I probably feel also very comfortable here in Georgia, and that's why I love the mountains here. So I went to school back in the late 70s and 80s. Well, times were very different to now. At that time, we were not member of the European Union. We only joined the European Union in '95. And we did not have the benefits of the European integration at the time. And I remember very vividly that only 30 kilometers away from Innsbruck, we had an international border separating North Tyrol from South Tyrol. You might know that South Tyrol was part of Austria until the end of the First World War, when it was then given to Italy. So whenever we wanted to go to South Tyrol, we had to go through cumbersome passport and customs controls. So I think this is one of the vivid examples of how good the European Union is, with open borders, Schengen, and so on. So. And at that time, of course, we also had to change money continuously. If we just wanted to go to 30 kilometers to Italy, we had to change money from shilling to lira. That is one of the greatest benefits of the European Union, that we all, or most of the EU member states, share the same currency. And you know, my generation still knows this, and the younger generation takes it all for granted. And that's why I think it's very important to remind them continuously of the achievements of the European integration. And something that you, Georgia, also aspires to. So I can only say it's a very cumbersome process until you get into the EU, but it's definitely worth it. I think the biggest challenge is private, is the private life, yeah? Because of course you want to have a family, you want your family to come with you to postings, which is first of all a challenge for your partner, because the partner has to give up her job. But it's also a big challenge with children. Yeah? Now, as long as children are small, okay, they can adapt easily. You put them to kindergarten here and there, but once they go to school, it's a difficult thing, because first of all, you need to take a choice. Which school system do you put them in? German school system, French school system, British school system, and then you need to basically pursue that throughout your career, probably have them to adapt also your postings to the school type, and you also need to bear in mind how children feel, because it's a very for children it's even more difficult to change. Yeah, they change when you change suddenly from one country to the other. They lose all their friends. They need to go into a new school system. They need to come into a new school class. They don't have friends. So I think this is probably the biggest challenge that you face as a diplomat. Most people would probably know that there was this Austrian-Hungarian Empire that was very influential. But let me then start with the end. So basically, after the First World War, basically, Austria shrunk to the size that it has now. So we lost all the other parts, although the Austrian society is still very much influenced by that time. Yeah? If you look into the phone book of Vienna, you will see a lot of names coming from Hungarian origin, from Czech origin, and so on. So Vienna was a very big melting pot. And I think this was a problem also for the First Republic, that they had first to find a sense of what is Austria now, after it was basically so many parts of the country were taken away. So there was a bit of a crisis, and it took a while until really the Austrian nation developed. You know that we were then in 1939 Hitler entered. 1938 Hitler entered, and we were basically then part of the German Empire. And again, after the war, after the Second World War in 1945, we were an occupied country. We were divided actually in 4 different zones. One administered by the Brits, one by the French, one by the Russians, and one by the Americans. And it was only in 1955 that we gained our independence again. So it was actually the death of Stalin which created a certain political momentum in 1953 that allowed then basically the Austrian government to start negotiating the re-establishment of our full independence. And finally, in 1955, the State Treaty was signed. And a very important element of our history at that time was that it was not part of formally of the State Treaty, but it was in essence a precondition that Austria would declare its permanent neutrality. So basically, in the day after the last foreign soldier left Austria, we declared our permanent neutrality. That was on the 26th of October, 1955. That's our national day, actually. And since then, we have been constitutionally neutral, which does not mean that we have not changed our interpretation of it. Yeah? For a long time, it was a question whether Austria could join the then European communities. There were international law experts that would have said it's not possible, but there was an interpretation then, and then which paved the way that we entered the European Union in 1995. We actually changed our constitution then, so that allows us to participate in EU-led operations. So we have further developed the concept of our permanent neutrality over the last decades, and we are now a proud member of the European Union now since 1995, for quite a long time already. I think we're a very active member of the European Union, and we very much see our future also in the European Union. To a degree, we have partially similar areas. I mean, we obviously are a very touristic country. So we have many tourists coming to Austria, both in summertime and in wintertime. But we do produce quite a lot as well. We have very important Austrian companies in all different fields. The most valuable trademark that we have is Red Bull. But we have also other very internationally renowned companies, trademarks and so on, but we do also quite have a good heavy industry in Austria. Well, actually when I came here 2 years ago, I had a certain idea of how deep the relations are between Georgia and Austria. But I have to say almost every day I discover new nuances of this relationship. Yeah? So you have so many different fields where our 2 countries do cooperate. It has probably to do also with similar size, similar topography, you know, mountains and all that. So it is really astonishing how many formal points of contact there are, but also how many informal points of contact there are. There's a lot of human relationships between our countries. We do a lot of support to help the European perspective of Georgia become a reality. Over the last years, we have supported Georgia a lot in very technical areas. There's not very much known, but I think a very valuable instrument which is called EU Twinning, where you team up institutions from member states together with Georgian institutions just to discuss what is the acquis, what is the best way for Georgia to implement it. I think we have done quite a lot in this area. We have a quite active development cooperation. Georgia is a priority country of the Austrian Development Cooperation since 2011. We have actually a technical coordination office here in Tbilisi. We are mainly engaged in the area of agriculture, rural development, local governance. So this is also an area we have a lot of business ties have developed, although I have to say it's a bit of up and down, yeah. And in particular with the COVID crisis, numbers have dropped again. They're now picking up again. In a few days, we will have a new business mission coming from Austria with a number of Austrian companies that will have a lot of business-to-business meetings with their counterparts, which we hope will generate new interest, new cooperations. And of course, we have a lot of cooperation in the area of universities, cultural cooperation. A lot of Georgian musicians and artists are, for instance, in Vienna. Well, as I said, I mean, Georgia has been a priority country since 2011, and we have worked a lot with our Georgian friends in the area of forestry, agriculture, sustainable mountain tourism, and in terms of local governance. We also have a lot of practical support. We do give out grants for farmers, for small tourism entities and so on, to help develop. Yeah? And maybe I can mention one big project that we're having, that is the so-called Greta project, which is a joint endeavor between with a lot of money from the European Union, Sweden and Austria, which we are managing, which is again very much focused on sustainable organic agriculture and sustainable mountain tourism in the areas of in the regions of Imereti, Racha and Svaneti. Yeah, I mean, you know, the tourism is one of the key areas where there's a huge potential for Georgia. We have seen tourist numbers picking up again, reaching basically the pre-COVID levels, and there's a lot of opportunity. But it's also about linking them together, because it doesn't help if you build hotels. You also need to make sure that there's a supply. Supply should be regional, not least because of all the environmental considerations. So by what we are trying is to have a more a comprehensive approach, basically not only building and constructing something, but also making sure that there's a supply chain, that we train people so that they get more value for their input, and basically get more for their living. Is a business interest? As I said, will be a business mission next week with a number of Austrian companies coming. So there is a genuine interest. So they're not least also because of the war in Ukraine. Of course, they are looking also for new markets. There are different areas where Austrian companies were engaged over the last decades. I mean, this is tourism infrastructure. It is in the area of sustainable energy, turbines for hydropower plants. It is in the food sector. We have a couple of Austrian brands represented here, like Meindl Coffee, Red Bull, Swarovski, Schirnhofer, just a few names that come to my mind. So there is quite a potential, but of course we work to deepen that more, because we all need more business contacts, more business cooperations to overcome all the economic consequences, for instance, of the COVID pandemic. Yeah. If Georgia wants to be even more successful, there are two areas which are key for companies. So Wild West might be a nice term, but I think companies are looking for something else. They're looking for rule of law, reliability of the legal system. Yeah? So I think this is an important element. If you have a proven, good legal system, rule of law, then that will be attractive for investments. And the second one is education. Obviously, you always need a skilled labor force. And I think here there's also a bit of catch-up to be done. We have the model of vocational training, which might be interesting also for Georgia, because this is what companies are looking for, trained labor force. Georgia needs to find its own model, yeah? I mean, we are happy to share the experience that we have. Of course, we did mistakes as well. And of course, there's always a better way to do things probably. And each and every country has a different environment and needs a different approach. But I think that's the good thing on to talk on equal level, to discuss what is best for Austria, what is best for Georgia. We are more than ready to help Georgia on that path. What do we have in common? We have a lot in common. You mean values or in general? Because we have mountains, we have wine, we have a lot of food and all that. So I think we are, in our mentality, we are very similar. Yeah, I'm always half jokingly saying we have the same topography of mountains, but you have the advantage you also have a sea. We don't have a seaside. Yeah, but I think from the mentality is pretty similar. Focus of your population, our population is similar. That's why also all Austrians love Georgia. Once they come to Georgia, they love it. Yeah, so I think it's far beyond Georgia being a secret hint. It's really now rather mainstream. I know a lot of people who want to come to Georgia. Actually, this question you should ask my counterpart, the Georgian ambassador in Austria. As an Austrian citizen, I would say there's still some work to be done, yeah? Because, of course, I mean, that's natural. That you first look at your neighbors, then you look at your neighbors' neighbors, and maybe you do not on a daily basis deal with Georgia in Austria. So if you open a newspaper, you will not see Georgia hitting the headlines every day. But if you go to the back pages where they then have travel advices and all that, there you will find Georgia more and more often. Well, we had, as I said, very, very difficult times after the Second World War. We were 10 years occupied, and basically we had a lot of destruction. So actually my grandparents' generation did a lot in terms of rebuilding Austria. I think the sufferings that they had, I cannot imagine today. Yeah, so I think, the Austrian identity became stronger and stronger with this. Yeah, and there was a clear determination for democracy, rule of law, and all this, and it was a clear choice also of the Austrian people then to join the European Union. It was at the time we had to, I told you about the discussions there was ongoing whether we would be able to join or not. But when it was the moment, basically the population rallied behind the government and with 2/3 majority voted for the accession. But what was extremely important was that this is not an easy task. It was a long process. But there was a determination also of the political elite to drive it through. For that reason also, one of the reasons why a grand coalition was formed was that, okay, we have a huge task ahead of us, we need a national consensus, and we were strongly working in this direction. So I think also for Georgia, it is important you have a big goal in front of you, something that is really worth working for, but it needs a national effort. Yeah, and I think this is really something you need to inhale. Yeah, this is really about values, about democracy, and about a lot of effort. Because in the end, it's a generational decision that you take, that we took, and that you take. Yeah. So, and I think time is too short to lose time and leave it to the next generations. I think also for Georgia, it's now a window of opportunity. The door of the EU is open. So we are happy to help you, but in the end, it's your choice, and it must be really a societal choice to move into that direction. Well, you had a dream for 30 years to have a European perspective. Now you have it. Yeah. So I think it is a historic decision by the European Union to grant you the European perspective. A year ago, I wouldn't have believed that. Yeah, and not even you yourself had that in mind, because the government said they want to apply for membership in 2024. It was obviously, we had huge shifts now in early this year, which opened a window. But I think it's really a huge chance for Georgia, which you should grab. Yeah, this is a chance which you deserve. But it is a chance that also needs now your engagement to drive this forward. I mean, the European integration process, the enlargement process follows a rather strict rule. So the EU will guide you. Yeah? There's no worries. I mean, now you have received the 12 conditions. There will be more conditions, obviously, in the future once you step on the next ladder of the process. We will guide you, but in the end, it's your decision whether you want to do this extra step or not. Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential, and maybe that it's not exploited yet. I mean, and you yourself have, of course, discovered that. I mean, look at your dependence on certain agricultural products that you need to import that could be easily produced here. So I think there is a huge potential also for you to become an important exporter into the European Union. You probably will never get the quantities that, for instance, Ukraine could have because of the size of the country. But I mean, it's very important for you to define your niches and export. I mean, beyond wine, obviously everybody thinks of wine, and this is very important. But there are also many other agricultural products which are of interest, be it hazelnuts, be it fruits, and so on. I think it's the mix of diversity. I mean, you have from seaside to mountains 5,000 meters high. You have from a very dry area climate to a tropical climate, and everything combined is with extremely big hospitality, excellent food, excellent wine. This is very dangerous, very dangerous. I will refrain from answering this, because there is no favorite. There's such a big variety, and I basically like all. Yeah. So Supra is perfect for me, but it's of course very dangerous. Yeah. Well, I think we will continue on the strengths that we have so far, be it in business, be it in culture, be it in development cooperation, and so on. But I guess not least because of the European perspective, we will even focus more on working together on Georgia's EU aspirations. Yeah? So we are more than happy to continue our cooperation with in the framework of EU twinning, but also in all other areas. We are happy to, based on Georgia's wishes and needs to exchange information, exchange experiences, tell you how we did it in the integration process, how did we set ourselves up, and so that we can learn from each other. Well, I see European Georgia. It will take still a long time until you will be full member, but I see a Georgia which has a very clear vision, and as I said, supported by 85% of the population. I see a Georgia that works hard to achieve this goal, and I see a Georgia that eventually will reach this goal. Okay, for young diplomats, my advice is don't have fixed plans. It never works out the way you want, and it all falls very well into place. Yeah? So I have never a career plan. I was always looking, okay, now for new opportunities. I had never a fixed mind, and I never regretted a single posting that I ever had.